Is sex important in a relationship? Here is what experts say the importance of sex in relationships. Is sex important in a relationship? It almost sounds like a trick question. Sure, romance is one of the main qualities in successful relationships. And a part of that includes quality sex. But how big a role sex plays in your love life depends on you and your partner. What we seem to know is that basically when sex is going well, which means you're having it consistently, and not having any major problems, then it really only accounts for about 15 to 20% of relationship satisfaction, says certified sex therapist Laurie Mintz, PhD, a professor of psychology at the University of Florida in Gainesville, and author of A Tired Woman's Guide to Passionate Sex. And consistently is not a one-size-fits-all model. It can mean very different things to different relationships. The most important part is that the two people in the relationship are on the same page about sex frequency. When your sex life is off track, though, it can make up for most of your dissatisfaction with your partner, she adds. For example, maybe your partner doesn't want sex when you do. That's not surprising for something that provides enormous benefits to your physical and emotional health, both individually and as a couple. But sex is way more than intercourse, say experts. So if that aspect of lovemaking isn't happening as often as it used to, don't despair. Read on to see why sex can be so important in relationships, and what to do if one or both of you feel you're not getting enough. Defining sex like an expert. When most heterosexual couples think of sex, they're generally thinking about penis and vagina, says Megan Fleming, PhD, a clinical psychologist specializing in sex and relationships in New York City. But the basics of sexuality is giving and receiving pleasure. So sex is anything you and your partner do consensually that involves erotic and sexual touch and pleasure, and for most of us, that involves genital pleasure, Mintz explains. You give each other oral sex, for instance, or pleasure each other with vibrators or with your hands. Redefining sex, so it's broader than intercourse, can be more inclusive of gay and lesbian couples, says Mintz. And it may help you enjoy better sex as you age, too. We know that sometimes, as people age, intercourse is not on the table anymore, due to vaginal dryness, erectile issues, and other medical issues, she says. And so if we start valuing all of the many ways to pleasure ourselves and our partners, we are much more likely to be able to age into our sexuality more gracefully. Focusing on the mutual pleasure that may or may not include intercourse also can help couples get over performance anxiety, which saps away at your relationship, says Fleming. If you're not sure how something's going to go, you'd rather not feel the disappointment or upset, she notes. So some people stop initiating. And that might even look like not hugging and kissing because people don't want to send mixed signals. Now that you can think of sex more inclusively, it's time to see how many perks it brings, both individually and as a couple. Why making love is so good for you. It's good for your physical health. There is a whole host of physical benefits that having sex, specifically orgasms, can bring to you. It may help relieve joint or muscle pain, and can reportedly help with headaches and menstrual cramps in some women. Women who orgasm frequently have a lower risk of developing endometriosis and more regular periods, says Mintz. It's also good for bladder control because when you have sex, your pelvic floor muscles get exercise. It also keeps your heart healthy, even increasing your life expectancy after a heart attack, according to a study published in 2020 in the American Journal of Medicine. Other research in the Journal of Health and Social Behavior found that sex lowers the risk of hypertension in middle-aged and older women. Sex may even be good for your immune system, suggests a small study in the journal Psychological Reports. It's good for your emotional well-being. Your brain changes when you have sex. The way that your brain looks right before orgasm is the same way your brain looks in deep meditation, says Mintz. Researchers found that intimacy lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, in men and women, according to research in a 2019 issue of Psychosomatic Medicine. Sex can also be an essential part of feeling alive and vital, of having a zest for life, says Fleming. Another benefit to good sex? It's validating, says New York City sex therapist Stephen Snyder, MD, author of Love Worth Making: How to Have Ridiculously Great Sex in a Long-Lasting Relationship. It makes you feel good about yourself in a way few other experiences can match. It's good for your relationship. Mins calls sex the glue and oil of a relationship. Without it, she says, couples either fall apart or become roommates who share chores, worries, and an occasional laugh. In terms of the oil, sex helps prevent friction and makes you less irritable, she says. I always joke with my clients who I'm trying to help get a better sex life that the things that irritate you about your partner before sex could even be endearing after sex. It can also release all those feel-good hormones, including oxytocin and dopamine, which increases feelings of connection and intimacy, says Fleming. Want to know what else increases those feelings? The little ways these couples make their partner feel loved. Here is what else it can do. It creates trust and shared memories, because you're sharing your deepest self with your partner, says Mins. It can enhance commitment and appreciation. And most interesting, the more sex you have, the more you want, she adds. So good sex is a positive cycle for not only more of those benefits, but for more sex. How much sex do you need to reap these benefits? According to research in the journal Social Psychological and Personality Science, you get all these feelings of emotional well-being and connections when you have sex once a week. More often is fine, you just don't reap more perks. If that amount seems like a lot, given your life right now, remember, it's really up to the couple to decide their ideal frequency, says Mins. When it comes up in her couples therapy, she tells her clients, whatever the two of you work out. I don't care if it's once a week or once a month. But here is the caveat. Both partners have to be satisfied with the amount, which requires communication and compromise, two key characteristics of a healthy relationship. Fleming agrees. If a couple isn't having sex frequently, whether it's once a month or once a year, and they're not distressed by it, then it isn't a problem, she says. It becomes problematic if it's distressing to one and not to the other. Then it becomes a relationship issue. The bottom line, there is no one-size-fits-all sexuality, Mins says. If you have sex that's really fun and orgasmic and connected once a month, you might be happier than the people who are having mediocre sex once a week. How to have a sex life you're both happy with? Many relationships have mismatched desire levels, typically a higher libido partner with a lower libido one, say experts. And while you may think your partner just wants sex, it may be the lack of connection and intimacy that your significant other is really missing, notes Fleming. Here is how to fix that imbalance so that you're both left satisfied. Work it out. Even though your sexual differences can feel like a relationship deal breaker, they're just as negotiable.